Hello, welcome back to BlenderSushi Live Noding. In this episode, I'm gonna introduce something new into my live noding series. I will bring in Pixar Renderman. It's this free version of the Renderman render from Pixar that I'm starting to get used to. Apart from Cycles Render and Blender Render that comes with Blender, I'm actually gonna use Renderman quite often and give it a little bit of study, and especially with its node based like a system that's similar to Cycles. I'm gonna have a look at it and then give a little bit of comparison, etc. This would be like the final stage in the procedural workflow. So you do a little bit of procedural modeling and procedural animation using animation nodes and Sverchok just to build your artwork and design, and then you need to eventually render it out. And you can choose any of these. Blender Render comes with freestyle that can give you like a more stylistic look, and then Blender Cycles a little bit more high for realistic render, and then Renderman Render that kind of it's already like quite a solid renderer, and it's been used in many of big movies. And anyway, it's available for you in Blender just for your study. But Blender, of course, Renderman for Blender is a licensed software. If you want to use it commercially, you need to pay for the license. But anyway, we're gonna take a look at the whole overlap and stuff. Today our topic will be just about vertex coloring. I like when doing like rendering and shading, I care much about color, and today we're gonna have a look at the vertex coloring and also how to make like variations in the object's color, like a single object, whether you have like a multiple object like this 1 2 3, or you have a single object where all of this is combined into one. So we're gonna take a look at this first. Like if you have objects that are single objects but you want to give a variation in color, of course you're gonna be coloring either the vertices or the polygon face of this object, right? We're gonna see how we can do that. You know that in Blender it has this vertex painting and allows you to just do a quick painting on the vertices of an object. This is something that we're gonna take a look real soon. So let's say I'm doing this just randomly painting these 3 cubes, nothing spectacular about that. And then once I've done with that painting, I cannot really see it on the screen. I think if you're in a Blender render and you want to have a look at the vertex painting, you need to turn on the vertex color paint and vertex color light. One of these, I think, should give you the result. Let me turn on ambient occlusion. Yeah, it's happening. So this is like rendering in real time, and you can see the color. I'm actually using this filmic color management as well, so it might look weird at first, but if I adjust the exposure and the gamma, start to look much better. So that's with Blender render. So we did a little bit of color painting on the vertices. Can't see it. Excuse me, can't see it. Okay, if we turn on the texture or the material, oh, actually the texture. The material needs a little bit of light. Gonna create a sunlight. So here we can see the color text, color painting that we have on the vertex of this object. And with the shading, while with the texture, we can see just the texture, sort of. I think you also need to consider the multi-texture or GLSL. All these kind of control your 3D display. Okay, that's with the Blender render file, save as. This is rendering vertex Color. Save. If you want to use the Vertex Color on Blender Cycles, you switch to Blender Cycles and then you need to just recreate the material. Now it's a cycle material, and then you go into compositing and you go to the material tab here, and the secret is to use attribute and then kind of look at this object and then check under the mesh data. Excuse me. We have vertex colors data name call. So we just type in call and plug that in, and that should work. So that's with cycle. You already know all about this. Now I want to use Renderman. Yeah, Renderman render. And so how do we do this thing? Let's have a look. I'm gonna switch to Renderman, and then with this guy currently still using the cycles material, I'm gonna convert all cycles to Renderman. And let's have a look at the result. So this is the default material that Pixar Renderman gave you, Pixar surface, but you can also pick any one of these, Pixar skin, all these Pixar materials that I think used in Finding Dory. We have this attribute nodes connected to this guy, which is currently not very useful. Now if you want to use the vertex color attributes, we need to take a look at Pixar attribute node. I believe it's Pixar attribute, but there's also like a primitive Pixar primitive variable. I believe this actually works per object basis, and this one for the primitives of an object. So I don't know, in the nature of BlenderSushi live noding, this is unrehearsed, so I kind of have to think here. But I know one fact, that we cannot type in call here. What we need to type in is something called CS. I think it's a CS is color shading or color surface. If you type in CS and then using the color, you should be able to pass in the object's vertex. So we still have the vertex data here called. I'm gonna select this light and then turn it into, oh, it's actually already Pixar light, so I guess we just do a quick render. Hopefully this works. Stunting render. This might actually take longer time, and normally it's a good idea to use a lower pixel resolution. And I'm using old Mac and I'm actually recording as well, so I think the first result is gonna be either flat or just black. So like if we are using Blender Cycles, it's really fast compared to Renderman. Renderman has a lot of interesting materials built for you, while with Cycles seems to be, it comes standard and very basics, but you can download Cycles shader with a Pixar shading. With a Pixar Renderman, you got a lot of really cool materials here to use, but it might be slower and it's gonna use more memory, so keep that in mind. 600 by 600, 50%, and I'll make this preview preset, and hopefully this is gonna be a lot faster. Okay, so we have this render. I believe that actually from the camera view, Okay, it's from the camera view, and I'm supposed to frame this more properly first. Lock the camera to view and kind of frame it. And you can see my render is a bit dark. That's because I'm using this color management as well. So this is something that I need to worry about. So it's plain and doesn't have any color. Let's see if I plug in the Pixar attribute CS into the diffuse color. Hopefully, actually, I think we need this guy, Pixar primitive variable, because we are dealing with the components of this mesh, which is the vertices, and it can be the polygon as well. I think it should be clever enough to look at the call data. Okay, cool. It's actually, yeah, it's working as planned. It's giving us the color. I think rendering is done, and I want to turn on the world as well. Maybe sky or environment. I'll just leave it as the basic bluish kind of environment light. Gonna get out of this. Now, okay, this seems to work. I want to also show you what you can do. Now, we already learned about procedural modeling using Sverchok and animation node. I'm gonna apply that into this. So I will delete this cube. I'm gonna create a Suzanne the monkey, and let's do this. Go to Sverchok, create a new node. This is gonna be Sverchok node. We're gonna start with the objects in, get selection. Okay, we have Suzanne the monkey here, and then we're gonna colorize this guy. So color, vertex color new. Okay, we're gonna plug in the object in, and then we have option here, colorize the vertices or the face or the loop. This is gonna be interesting. We start with the vertices first and provide a color here. I wonder if we can visualize this. Let's check it out. Gonna give a random color first of all. Random color. We don't have the color node yet, but we can use the random vector mk2. Plug that in. Give it some color. And if we switch to the vertex paint, we can see the color. It's kind of building up. Okay, I don't know how many points we have on Suzanne. Gonna check it. Trees, vertices, edges, faces, trees. There's a better way to check how many vertices, etc. We just gonna use list length here. But in stethoscope, 507 vertices on this default Suzanne, unsmoothed. How many polygon we have? We have 500, I believe. Okay, 500 face. And even though we didn't supply the index number, this will work right away. So that's our advantage. Let's do a quick test render in Renderman. Hopefully it takes the vertex color and displaying it. Oh, apparently it doesn't. Because why? Because of the material. I think we haven't not assigned Renderman material into this guy. Pixar surface, CS, and render. Switch back to Sverchok. This is a colorize vertices procedurally. Okay, cool. It's working. View from camera. Now we have to reframe this guy. Okay, cool. And yeah, so we have random color here. It's based on the random vector, but of course random vector has all kind of color. That's sometimes it goes black as well because it's a negative. It's a good idea to maybe vector out and vector in here and use some mapping, map range -1 to 1 and 0 to 1. Plug that in. Plug. And this is of course probably not the right way to do it, because you're gonna get like a black and white, because random vector is using the same seed for every point. It's a better idea if you use a random number generator. Or actually it's giving us something, but just a lot of white. Let's cut that and let's do it this way. Integer, how many do we need? 507. I'm gonna use random seed. Oops, this is for the size. Random seed, size, random seed. Plug that in. It should be float. So random value between 0 and 1 for RGB. Okay, render out. We can check the result in here, I think. So yeah, so it's still a random number, but it's more correct. Start rendering. Rendering done. It's pretty bright. Must be because of this color thingy. Okay, gamma. Cool, very nice, high quality render there. I believe I can randomize the seed here. Maybe less, this one is green value, less green, so it's more purple, less blue, more yellow, and less red, or more red. So that's with a random color. I'm hoping there will be like a Sverchok update for the color real soon. I haven't checked this. Check for new version. Okay, upgrade. That's a nice thing about Sverchok. You can just update it. I think there's like quite a few new nodes in Sverchok. One of them is the noise, vector noise MK2 is a new noise with seed. So that's gonna be really interesting. Vector noise with seed. Wow, I haven't checked this. Let's say we are using line. And for the line we have 507 vertices. We plug into the vector noise, and we are using standard Perlin, and we plug this into the color. What's gonna happen? Okay, we have this. Stepping control the scale of the noise. We have the seed. Okay, cool. I think Zephy works on this. Very nice. Yeah, we can colorize it that way, or we can use the face. Face will be more cleaner If you are like a graphic designer and then you want to colorize random color for every face, this is how you do it. Very nice. Cell noise, Blender. I think the noise range is between -1 and 1. So probably it's a good idea to use math here and just increase the value. Once we have the color node, it's going to be a lot easier to control the color. Standard Berlin, but anyway, if we render it out, we're going to get an interesting result. This loop is a bit mystery. It's I think Linus worked on it, and it kind of like it's gonna loop through each face and can give you gradient per face. Very interesting, and it might give you like an interesting result. I think you need to consider the number of face and multiply it by 4. So maybe you need 2000 here. This is even more good looking if you render it out. There's a gradient color per face, kind of interpolating between the point. Hard to explain, but you can see there's a gradient, like a variety of gradient for that face. Okay, that's kind of nice. What else can we do here? Maybe play a bit with a Pixar material. I have not looked at each one of them properly, but I use skin a little bit. Skin looks really nice, and plastic, metal, of course. Metal and glass, we have like a diffuse similar to Cycles. PXDF. I'm just gonna let's use plastic. Plastic has a lot of option here: roughness, translucency, make the plastic thinner or thicker, specularity, bump, clear coat. There's a lot. Okay, but still, it's much simpler than if you use Renderman many years ago. Now they have this specialized material, but you can also build it from scratch, just like Cycles. And with this kind of shader, you just need to worry more about the lighting and the texture for the object. The material, if it says plastic, it should kind of generally looks like plastics. Okay, let's go back to the default shading. You know what? I'm actually kind of interested to show you this. There is something called PxrPrimvar. So this is a cool node. I probably should talk about PxrPrimvar in the next live noding, but with this guy we can kind of colorize, make a random color very easily. So let's say you have like red color and you want to randomize the hue slightly, saturation, illumination, the luminance, HSL. And if you plug this into the color and variable, integer, float, I think fingers crossed, I think this might actually work. With Renderman, it needs to generate the rib and then starting to calculate for the render. So it's a little bit slower, but if you have like a huge scene, Renderman can be pretty fast. Identifier name, primitive variable. One of these can give you a random color, I think. Integer. If you have like a multiple objects. Maybe this should be identifier name. So it looks at the object names, and then if the object names are different, it's gonna use a random color. There are four different options here. I thought PxrPrimvar can give you the result, but you can see the other Suzanne get a different color. I should have reframed this. Anyway, I think I will use PixarVary node for the next live noding tutorial. Gonna go back with a PxrPrimvar and just use the CS. Plug this guy into the color. Let's reframe our camera, view, camera, lock camera to view, reframe it, and render. I think Brian from Pixar said that if you use all Pixar nodes, everything will be a little bit faster. If you you can use some of the Blender own node as well. Like I believe the texture, like Musgrave from Blender, will probably work. Okay, we have a random color for each monkey. The random color comes from Sverchok, of course. Let's switch this back to face. Keep it simple, 500. Randomize the seed. I like this vector noise MK2. It's a kudos to Sverchok developer. We can have a different color for each monkey if we sort this guy 1, 2, 3, 4. Get selection. Now we have 4 Suzanne, but Vertex Color new kind of, actually it works for all of them. I believe it's so each one of them should have different Vertex Color. So that's that monkey. That's that monkey. Are they the same? They look the same. Maybe I need to randomize this color and maybe different seed for each one of them. So range integer count 4, start step, whatever. So now hopefully they're slightly different. Vertex pane. So you can see that red, green there. Are they all? They're all still having the same color? I guess that's all right. Doesn't matter. Standard Berlin. I have to test it. Why is it like same color? Anyway, quick render. Let's use Pixar Sky, Sky tint, blue and red sun, and do a quick render. So doing live noding and render might take a little bit longer than usual. Actually, the whole this live noding thing is if I put them together, it's gonna be, maybe it's like for this my imaginary books called The Joy of Noding using Blender. So I love doing nodings and procedural stuff, and doing it in Blender is still kind of like unusual because Blender itself is not node based at the moment. It's but animation nodes and Sverchok and then things like cycles and compositing, it's all put them all together and you have kind of a system that you can start learning. Oh, wait a minute, where's my color management thing. Seems to be disappeared. Display filter samples. And shift back to Blender Render, and we have the color management. So that's the result with a Pixar plastic material. Let's switch back to Renderman and use something more esoteric, like the skin. Now they are have a skin color. Pixar primitive variable. Let's use it for near color. Let's do another test render. This one I can put in slot number 2 render. With Pixar, you can render it out to Pixar own image viewer. They call it IT or it. There's external render. Where is that window? This one. Render to Blender or render to it. So that's the result. With a skin shader, it looks a bit like skin. If I switch to Blender Render here and color management, maybe increase the contrast. I really like how Blender is so interactive in terms of being able to do this while it's still rendering. I do this all the time with Blender Cycles and Blender Render internal render as well. So it's still doing render, but I can do the color management while it's rendering. It's really powerful. As an open source tool, this is like 10,000% what would you expect from just a open source software. You know, it's free. You don't need a license. You can do all this really powerful. Okay, skin shader. It looks okay. It looks like the skin, but it works works better if you turn this into a smoothed version. Oops, undo that. Solid. Control 2, smooth it, and let's reframe this. Give it more space on the X. I guess I'm gonna do one more render and then call it done for this live noding. Not seeing anything. I have a feeling because of the layering thing. I must have done something weird here. Can't see any render anymore. Well, I'm gonna put the final render result in the thumbnails of this video anyway. Thanks again for tuning into this live noding. So we talked a little bit more about Pixar Renderman later, but in this one we have talked about Vertex Color and how to pass in the color of each vertices that we painted into Renderman. Thanks again for tuning in. If you have any suggestion, feedback, let me know. I'll answer as fast as possible, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank